All right, everybody, we've got a very special guest for y'all this week. Everybody, please welcome to the show, Mark Irwin. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Hey, a titan in the industry, I guess. I don't know if that's how we say it, but somebody who's been in the industry for a long time. I mean, you've worked with Marvel, DC, probably almost every publisher, right?
At some point, yeah.
At some point, and now you're at Mad Cave, and Chris and I talk about Mad Cave probably on a weekly basis now, and I think over the last year or so, we were always like, man, this like they're doing some cool stuff. And I have to say it did start with Nottingham. I mean, that I feel like that really put it on the radar for us.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about the success Mad Cave's had, but
I'll say real quick, just jump in there. I remember like I was interested in Mad Cave. Mark London, who I believe is the guy who started the whole company.
Mm-hmm.
He did that book Battle Cats.
Yeah.
And I was like,
that's right.
I read Battle Cats. I'm like, this is a fun book. I like this. But like, no offense to Battle Cats. I'm just like, okay, but this is what the company is. Fine. Small publisher, good, whatever. And then like Mike said, I saw you guys doing the creator, trying to find creators online, doing the contests and everything. I was like, that's an interesting idea. Hopefully it works out for them. And it did, because you got Nottingham out of it. And I was like, oh shit. These guys they're doing something here.
Yeah.
And so take it from there.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot to digest there. Yeah. So, well, this year is our 10-year anniversary as a company.
Oh, awesome.
10 years ago, Mark London started the company basically as sort of a vanity press to publish his own ideas. Battle Cats was the first amongst a few. He had some small success with that stuff. He is a storyteller by heart, and he had more ideas, more than he could possibly get done himself. And that's sort of how the company slowly grew, reaching out to people, hiring people on a work for hire basis. And then when they implemented the talent search, came with the caveat that whoever won those talent searches would actually be doing Mad Cave ideas. So Nottingham is actually a Mark London idea, executed by David and Shane. So, that's sort of like the origin of all that stuff. And about almost 3 years ago, they started a young adult imprint called Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
Right before they started that, they brought me in. I had recently been with IDW, and the company was looking to grow, but in both a refreshing way and also sort of a very interesting way. Mad Cave as a whole at the time was really a company of people that wanted very badly to execute Mark's vision, but most of the company, including Mark himself, hadn't really been a part of the industry on a long-term basis. Like a lot of new thinking, a lot of unjaded thinking, which I found very refreshing after having been myself in the industry for so long. So, when I came on board, Mark asked me, to help him grow the company. After a short assessment period, we kind of took a look at things and we changed distribution models, moving over to Simon & Schuster so that we had a bigger book presence, which really helped the Maverick line. And then we purchased Paper Cuts, which at the time was sort of maybe not the most successful, middle grade publisher, but a middle grade publisher that had a ton of content and quite a bit of material out there, including things like Asterix and Smurfs and, really well licenses. So we brought them on board, and we've grown our editorial staff. We've grown our sales staff. We have a lot of initiatives that are kind of crazy right now that we're trying to do. We brought in a lot of licensing, obviously, with things like Dick Tracy and Gotcha Man and Flash Gordon, Disney, Miraculous Ladybug. There's a lot of different things happening here at the Cave. And then while all of that's been occurring, we've also been bringing on a lot of creator-owned books, bring in some really fantastic talent to not only work on our titles, but to work on their own titles, to work on licensed titles. So yeah, I mean, we're in a massive period of growth right now. We take a look around the industry, and I think we all sort of have like the same ambition, which is to really think of ourselves more as a fully fleshed out publisher rather than a comic book publisher. While making sure that we're trying to do as much interesting and really diverse content as possible. I think our books are pretty unique if you look at the diaspora of comics out there.
I was saying that when the growth was happening and I saw it and it seemed like you were doing it right, which I'm not going to name another publisher, but like I've seen other publishers that just like, let's just shotgun blast a bunch of stuff out there and see what sticks, where it really felt like when you guys were picking stuff, even if it wasn't a book that was for me necessarily, it looked quality. And that's what I started to associate with Mad Cave was quality. And and then like now you guys are kind of, now you're at a point where like we're just gonna make books for Chris because you Dick Tracy, which has that hit shelves yet?
No, April.
Yeah.
Right.
April. So I wrote a review on that. I love that first issue. You got Sanction coming out, which is another like crime book, but it's set in the Soviet Union. Like that's everything I love. And then you got Mugshots coming out, which is another crime book that looks fantastic. Like, and then you pick up these. I mean, Dick Tracy's one of the IPs, but then you pick up Flash Gordon, and more importantly for me, because it's an IP I've always been interested in, but never had an access point to. You pick up Gatchaman.
Yeah. That was one for me too. Yeah.
And I guess I would love to just sway over to Gatchaman for a second.
Absolutely.
You guys are making new stories, and from what I've read, they're based on the continuity of the anime.
Yes.
Do you have any connection to the original manga?
So the original manga was actually done as an offshoot of the anime.
Okay.
In Japan. And funnily enough, the parent company of Gatchaman, we have tried to access that material. They don't even have records of it.
Wow.
They know that it was done, but nobody knows where it is or who has it or even who did it. It's
wow.
It was a really interesting license to approach because one of the things that we always do, we have a brain trust meeting weekly, amongst myself and Mark and our publisher and our editor-in-chief, Chris and Mike, and the four of us get together and we just talk about like what we'd like to do, where, the direction of the company is going, all the different things. And I think like this might have even been in the first year I joined the company. It probably was like maybe even within the first 6 months. We sat down and we had this big, long discussion about anime and all the things that we liked, and Mark, for instance, is a massive Vampire Hunter D fan.
Nice.
And then over talking, it was like, I'm a little older. I might be one of the older people at the company, and I'm sitting there going, "Oh, I remember Battle of the Planets and Star Blazers. I love all those shows. They played them back to back when I was a kid." And so we kind of made a list, like basically a dream list of properties. I can share. There were things like Ninja Scroll, all the kind of the obvious anime and manga properties, and we just started reaching out. I've been doing this for a long time, so I had a certain amount of sort of licensing background. So reached out to a lot of different connections. And the first one to show interest in working with us was Gatchaman, which made me super happy because that's probably my all-time favorite anime, property.
Yeah.
And I traveled to Japan. I met with the company and their offices, got to see all their, original artwork on the wall.
Amazing.
So cool. Yeah. And it's certainly something that I'm very, very proud of to bring here. And I'm overwhelmingly excited about the new storylines because I think we're doing things with the original property. It is based in that 72 to 73, 74 continuity. Mm-hmm. But the creators that we have on board, their approach to that and how they're basically branching out within that universe is stunning. I am so excited, and the people that we have working on it, I mean, I'm just over the moon about. So,
and for somebody like me, Mark, who I mean, I wasn't a big Gatchaman fan. I don't know much about the continuity. Like jumping into the story, I'll get brought up to speed. Right? That's something you guys are doing too? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The early pages I've seen, obviously there's going to be a free comic book day, edition of Gatchaman. The pages I've seen so far are just fantastic. It's super colorful. It's, it's very over the top, but the main storyline, like the importance of the storylines is actually pretty unique, because for a property that was, came out in 72, there's a huge environmental sort of background to the story that really makes it, I think, relevant to today's world. Not to mention, teenagers with problems, having to work together, to stop basically a galactic takeover. So, there's a lot of meat there for our writers to play with. So we're really excited about it.
And there's more than just like a flagship title book, right? There's a couple other not one shots, but side series to go with it too that you guys are working on.
Yeah, there'll be side series with all the characters, the main characters, to basically work alongside the main series. Those things tie in together as well. We'll be announcing more as it starts to come out, but there's some really exciting things happening with that.
Awesome.
And how important was getting these IPs and doing kind of outside IP stuff for the growth of the company? Like getting Dick Tracy and getting Gatchaman as the two big ones to come out with initially, along with Flash Gordon, obviously. What did that do to kind of bring you a little bit further, is from just being the people who are executing Mark's vision to now the people who are doing like creator own stuff to now doing more?
I think it's very important. Having worked for a number of companies along my career path, what I've always seen as far as success goes is sort of a multi-tiered approach to how you make great stories. For every great story that Mark comes up with or that we come up with internally, there's obviously great creators out there that we want to work with that want to do their own thing rather than work on our stuff. There's obviously great creators out there that have a love for things like Gatchaman or Dick Tracy. And it kind of makes sense to really be broad-based, because that way, if I'm talking to a massive group of fans, let's say we're talking to 1,000 fans, there's probably going to be 300 of those fans that love only licensed material. There's probably going to be 300 of those fans that are diehard, Cullen Bunn fans that, want to read Cullen's creator-owned material. And then there's probably 300 of those fans that are like, I don't care about any of that stuff. I just want what's new. Right. And I've never heard of Mark London or Mad Cave, and I just want to check that stuff out because it all sounds cool. I want to check that out. So I think it's really important to think of things in that way rather than to go just down one path. And that's why I talked in the beginning about being a true publisher rather than just a comic book publisher. When the acquisition of Paper Cuts came with things like Asterix, which is the greatest selling comic book in the world. Smurfs, Loud House, Geronimo Stilton, those are big properties that are known worldwide. That brings a lot of eyes to us and attention. Those books sell incredibly well. And then you add things like Gatchaman or Dick Tracy, Flash Gordon, which has a 90-year history. Those are all things that make people take notice and want to at least check us out. If they never gave us a chance before, if they walked into their local and said, I'm a Marvel DC guy and that's all I buy, they'll have heard of, Flash Gordon. They'll have heard of Dick Tracy. They'll want to at least open those covers and see what we're doing that makes us different. So that's important to us.
And I want to talk about those other properties in a second, but you did mention, you name dropped the Cullen Bunn there. Cullen's probably one of the creators that's probably been on our show the most. I think he has the record for. So we're huge fans
to that soon.
Yeah. We're huge fans of his. Such a great guy. How did that? Can you talk about how the interaction happened? Because I know he predominantly a horror writer, right? I love his horror stuff. A lot of body horror, and then he comes off a book like Godzilla versus Power Rangers, where he takes these two properties that's like a mashup of the action figures I had growing up. Like, wow, this is such an amazing idea. And then to have him on a property like Gatchaman, I feel like that kind of flows nicely into that property. I don't know, is that how you guys saw it, or how did that really come about?
Yeah, I think with Cullen, I mean, I've known Cullen for a long time. We actually met each other during a Green Lantern like dinner retreat for DC like a million years ago.
That's awesome.
But Cullen is a guy who he's a great writer, period. You know, although he's become known for his horror material, you know, Cullen kind of cut his teeth in the superhero arena. He's well aware of like licensed properties and all that kind of stuff. And when we started reaching out to creators for Gatchaman, Cullen like literally threw his hat in the ring and was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you guys are getting Gatchaman. That's one of my favorite things ever."
That's awesome.
And then he came up with a general concept along with our two other big writers on that book.
Yeah.
And the three of them created this multi-tiered approach that none of us saw coming. And Tatsunoko, who is the parent company of Gatchaman, they were blown away by the ideas, and awesome. You know, kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, not to discredit the other writers. You have Tommy Lee Edwards, right, and Steve Orlando, two other big names. We're just a little partial to Cullen Bunn here, but yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Tommy is a good friend. We shared the same art agent for quite a while, and we go way back. And he's a massive fan as well. I know Steve is a huge fan. So Chris Batista, who's drawing the main book, is a massive Gatchaman fan. Like this is like his dream job working on this book. So and it's a pleasure to have all of them. They're all so motivated and excited to be working on something, you know.
Yeah. I've been noticing with Steve too, and I know you guys are publishing some of these as well. He's had this kind of resurgence in his career where like he's kind of like shifting over to YA storytelling. And
you're talking about Chris Batista or
no, Steve Orlando.
Oh yeah.
Even like that. I know we're talking about Mad Cave here, but even that book he's doing with Magma, I'm like, this kind of has a YA feel to it, and I think he has one through you guys too, and
Over Vessels.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see him taking on things that are way different from what I remember Steve Orlando being like 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you're a creator and have been in this industry for a while, you are constantly looking for ways to broaden your horizons, you know, do different things, work on different types of material. You know, I know I started my career as an inker, well, technically as a letterer, quickly as an inker, and then was an inker for a long time. But the whole time I was inking, I was also working jobs where I was learning how to project manage, how to edit, how to manage material, how to project manage things like toys and all that kind of stuff, as well as writing. So you kind of gain skills as you go, and you see different things that give you different ideas and make you want to grow as a creator.
Yeah, that's I know we didn't talk much about your origin. Sorry about that, Mark, because I just got excited about the Gatchaman. But yeah, I mean you're a big example of that, right? Going from like what you talked about. I think you were working on the Marvel card game back in the day too, right? You had some involvement with that.
I was the art director on the Versus System game over at Upper Deck. Yeah.
Yeah, and now, you know, being a VP here at Mad Cave, I'd say it's some changes along your career path, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I went to the Kubert School.
Yep.
You know, my first job was art director at Heavy Metal. I was there briefly and then moved on to Wildstorm, and, you know, just over time, every one of those stops, from Wildstorm to Upper Deck to Insight Comics to IDW, every one of those things was sort of like a learning experience and kind of adding skills to your CV sort of thing. And, just learning how to do different things and how to manage people and how to, really grow. I mean, I've been very lucky in that I've had a lot of really great mentors and a lot of people that were willing to kind of show me how to be better at what I do. So
that's awesome. I mean, it's, and Chris and I, like I said, we're talking about Mad Cave all the time here. And I guess we could just keep talking about the properties you acquired, because there are a couple books here that I think we want to talk about apart from that. But let's just, Dick Tracy is the elephant in the room, right? That's such a huge property. And I know Chris and I, when that news dropped, we were like, wow, that's a big one. So I don't know if you just want to give us the rundown on that, because that was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Segura is a longtime sort of friend of the company.
Mm-hmm.
There was, I think there was like a number of things that like either he consulted prior to even me joining the company. Him and Mark knew each other, and he would always sort of pitch us stuff while also talking to us about other things, and eventually came with this pitch, and we were like, what? And we were excited to jump on it, and obviously having Geraldo drawing the book is amazing. I know Michael Morrissey has had sort of a background of being a big writer on stuff, so between him and Alex, like it was kind of like we can't pass this up. So we jumped on it, and we're super excited about it. I'm super excited about all the different covers that we've had done for it. I think it's going to be a huge book for us.
I think so too. That's one of those books where the name Dick Tracy, but like I've never really read a bunch of Dick Tracy. It's always been in my comic career kind of on the back shelf. Like no one's really done anything with it in a long time. I know there's the movie back when I was like a toddler. Not to age anyone here, sorry, but of Dick Tracy. I'm like, well, as I grew up like reading Ed Brubaker stuff and loving crime noir and just falling in love with that genre, I was like, well, it makes sense that the detective book set in the 40s, 50s, like that's right up my alley. So of course I'm going to try it out. And then to get this book, and it's not exactly what I thought it would be, but I mean, it was much more violent than I expected it to be.
More blood than I thought. That's okay.
But it still had like some of that flair that I remember my dad talking about with these Dick Tracy comics back in the back of the newspaper, and all that stuff. So I thought it was a really good book. And even if people who don't like Dick Tracy or have like some sort of preconceived notion of it, I've been telling them just read it, because I don't have that preconceived notion, but I can tell you it's just a damn good book.
Yeah. I think that's the hope, the hope when you're dealing with any property that's, has been around as long as Dick Tracy, Flash Gordon's kind of the same thing. You want to have a new approach to it. You want to enliven it, but not take away from what made it great in the first place. And I think Alex and Michael have done a really good job of balancing that. Obviously Geraldo's art is, amazing.
Yeah.
Really nice. You got that really good kind of combination there. I think also, things like Dick Tracy, like you get the crazy rogues gallery. But I think with their story, you're getting a rogues gallery that actually makes sense. It's not just weird people that are, drawn funnily for the purpose of the strip. So, I'm really excited about Dick Tracy.
Did Geraldo also do? I'm screwing up his name. I don't know why I can't say it. Geraldo. But did he also do the colors?
That's a good question. I don't believe so. I don't have the credit page in front of me to tell you for sure, but because obviously I'm not editing these titles. But
Mark Englert.
There you go.
Mark Englert did the colors. Yep.
Because
long time colors.
Yeah, the colors throughout it are they really steal the show, really, and something we don't talk enough about. But that opening sequence, and I don't think this is a spoiler because you guys have put it out there as preview pages. But that opening sequence when like that diner gets gunned down and he drops the colors and it goes almost red.
Yeah,
and I remember reading it going, holy shit. I cannot believe this is what a Dick Tracy book is, because like I said earlier, it's just not what was explained to me when I was growing up.
It's not your father's Dick Tracy, right?
Exactly.
Certainly isn't. No, I think anytime that you have somebody who works so strongly with shadow and blacks, throughout their pages, like Geraldo does, I think getting a strong colorist is imperative to that, and getting somebody who actually knows how to work with that and make it shine. It's like I said, it's a dream team on that book. We're really happy with it, and we think fans will be as well.
Yeah, and I want to just pull this up for everybody, just so everybody can see what I'm talking about. If you're watching the YouTube version of this,
yeah, you can pull up that page because it is pretty insane. Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that page alone, I was like, okay, I'm checking this book out for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. I could talk about how much I enjoyed Dick Tracy for the rest of the episode. It's I cannot believe how much I enjoyed Dick Tracy.
And it went from like when the announcement was made, we're like, wow, Dick Tracy is a huge property. How is Mad Cave going to handle it? And I think we were pleasantly surprised with what we saw, for sure.
Well, I think if you look at across all of the properties that we work with, the goal for us with any sort of licensing is to make sure that we can bring something to the table. It's a big part of it is how do we, when we talk to licensors who say, well, we just want you to do storytelling based on the TV show or based on the movie or whatever. That doesn't really interest us. What interests us is growing the universe, growing the IP, bringing something unique to the table that makes that a whole new flavor of that particular license. So, and I feel like we've achieved that across the board with all of the properties we've talked about.
That's probably a great segue to talk about Flash Gordon a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for setting us up for that. Wow, this is.
I think what's unique about that one among the three was you. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you guys got the rights to print all the old stuff as well.
We do. We are the master publisher for Flash across the whole diaspora of Flash Gordon. In addition to reprinting the old material, similar to what Titan did, doing collections that show you all of that new old material, I should say, in a nice light and a collectible light. We also have a lot of growth within the universe of Flash that will actually stretch across all three of our imprints. So you're going to be able to see different versions of Flash at the middle grade, at the YA level, and then also at the adult level. And in addition to Flash, we're also publishing Defenders of the Earth, which was sort of like Flash's super team. There's some other characters involved in that. So, Dan DiDio has joined us to work on that title. I hope we announce that.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, there's some really good stuff happening on Flash Gordon as well that we're super. I keep saying excited. I got to stop saying excited, but
there's nothing else. There's no other way to be, I think, than excited with how it's being handled. I would say that one's probably, as far as the properties go, the newest one because we haven't seen too much about it.
We're. I think they want to have a certain amount of those like ready to go all at once, so that when it does come out, you'll basically get sort of that diaspora coupled with the interaction of the Defenders of the Earth series and the regular series.
Okay.
So with those books, the new stuff you guys are creating there as well, what's the emphasis? Is the emphasis just take Flash Gordon and tell cool stories, or is the emphasis like we gotta have a Star Wars like control on continuity to make sure the puzzle pieces fit?
I would say that it's a little bit of both. We have some cool stories that are sort of, like I said, since we're publishing across imprints, that portray Flash in a different light for different audiences. We certainly gear, most of the Mad Cave titles are sort of geared toward us, right? Like the people that go to, your LCS and buy comics on a weekly basis. But there's bookstore people that have maybe never heard of Flash Gordon, and we want to be able to introduce the character in a different light to them. So we have different focuses. There is some continuity that will be a part of the Master Series, and I would say that the middle grade and YA titles are sort of standalone, but have some effect on the overall Flash Gordon universe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'll probably end up. I mean, some of these, like I find myself. I mean, not ever like picking up a Dick Tracy book or Flash Gordon, but like some of the creators that I see tied to these, like Michael for Dick Tracy. I mean, I'm a huge Barbaric fan, so sometimes I'll just follow the creator to a book and just be like, yeah, him doing Dick Tracy. Let's see what happens. So I think, like you said, like the group of 1,000 people, how are you gonna pick them or get them to read a book? I think is an interesting approach, because I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I mean,
into it.
Well, I know how I am as I shouldn't say really collector, but as a reader.
Mm-hmm.
I follow creators whose stuff I like. I've always been like that. I mean, I have so many I've got tons of long boxes that you can't see on the other side of this desk. And every single one of those is probably full of like half runs on a book that I only bought because I like the artist, or I only like because I like the writer. I really have never bought because of Marvel or DC or Dark Horse or any of that. I've never bought because of a character. I buy because I like that creator. So I think that people in general maybe sort of read because of that. I know that there's brand loyalty. I know that IP loyalty, but I think people get really excited to find out like what that creator is doing and how they can take that particular character in a different direction. Like you guys said, you may not know much about Gotcha
right?
Especially I think a certain audience level, younger audience, may not know what Gotcha is or have any idea about it. And I think, and I hope that the way we present it will give you a reason to check it out, because we have great creators attached to it. We take a different approach with the storytelling. That's all the kind of stuff that you want to get when you open any book. You want to be wowed, right? You want to open the book and go, man, I never saw that coming. That's what we hope to be with all of the things that we do.
And I guess, like, speaking of wow, I never saw that coming. For a series, can we talk Nottingham for a second? Because that book, Sheriff of Nottingham. Okay, let's open this book and see what it's about. But I have to imagine that book, it's really like made Mad Cave like a publisher that more people wanted to check out, right? I mean, that book was super popular.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think Shane and David took that idea and ran with it. They've created something that I think even internally we weren't necessarily expecting. And the people that get super excited that want to buy that or talk to us about it at shows, it really did put us on the map in a lot of ways. And it's helped people discover stuff that came before. Battle Cats has shockingly had like some resurgence in popularity.
Chris doesn't shut up about it.
Hey, it's Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah,
we get excited about that kind of thing. So I think anytime that you see something again unique, right? like people, oh, what is this? Another Robin Hood book? Oh, it's not another Robin Hood book. It's not like any Robin Hood book you've ever read.
Right. Yeah.
Getting people excited about new stuff like that. I mean, shoot, that's what all independent publishers hope for.
Right.
That we can get a book that nobody expects out into the market. So
yeah, that's true.
A zeitgeist book. Like, I remember when that came out, everybody's talking about it, and your initial reaction's like, okay, like a Robin Hood book, like, okay. But then everybody just keeps telling me, like, dude, it's really great. It's really great. You got to read it. And took a few convincings, but finally read it. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, it's a really good Robin Hood book, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah.
I mean, we're put, I think it's almost impossible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's almost impossible for any creator out there to come up with an idea that's never been done. The goal of creators is to present it in your voice and to give it, what makes you unique, and that's going to make the story unique. We've all read crime books, we've all read superhero books, we've all read horror books, but the creators are what make it unique to you, the reader, and that's what changes sort of the outcome of how you read that thing. You go, oh, wow, yeah, that's a totally different take. It is content that I know, but it's a totally different way of approaching it. So that's what's exciting,
Yeah, and I think it's kind of another great segue to the two big books you guys announced that are, I believe, creator owned, are Mugshots and Sanction. Both crime noir-esque books in their own way, and both books that immediately, I remember Mike making the joke on the show, like, Chris's pull list just took a hit on these two. We're bringing those two in at around the same time an accident? Was there like some sort of thing that London's like, we need more crime books, or like, how did those two books come about for you guys?
Well, I think in general, if you look at Mad Cave across the whole, we sort of specialize in horror and sort of dark, right? We have a lot of dark books. We have some crime noir. We have some futuristic noir. We kind of have like a mix of that stuff with a little bit of horror splashed in, and then some horror titles that are just straight horror. I can go into a little depth on Sanction, because Sanction was actually my idea. And it was something that I had started writing like 5 or 6 years ago on my own, just for myself. I wanted to do a serial killer story. I wanted to base it in Russia. I kind of had a background of that story of the short novella by Stephen King called Apt Pupil. And I kind of wanted to work with that sort of thought process, where the bad guy gets investigated and then, by somebody who then gets seduced by the dark side. And that was sort of the thought process behind Sanction. And I'd written like 15 pages, like a short outline, and I just never got back to it. I got super busy and just sort of had forgotten about it. And during one of our meetings, Mark said, we need more originals. We need to do more originals. Do you guys have any ideas? Is there any, stuff that he saw? I have a few things. What do you guys have? And after a little bit of thought, I was just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to finish this. And I gave it to Mad Cave, and our editorial staff took off running with it. They reached out to Ray. Ray's, like, what he's done with just that little bit of, start that I had and where he's gone with it. I'm blown away. I'm super excited about it. He took what I wasn't entirely sure I could pull off. And he's pulled it off in spades. Like, it's way better probably than I ever would have come up with. Writing is not my first skill. I am certainly slow at it, he just took it and ran with it. And the pages that have come in so far, like all the art is, it is just a beautiful book. I am so excited about that book. It's probably one of my favorite things. And I, managed to convince my best friend in comics to do the covers. And Dan Promotion, who I've known for 30 plus years, and Dan's crushing it on those covers. They're all amazing. I just couldn't be more excited about that book.
Yeah, definitely. And what really drew me to that one over Mugshots, honestly, is like we've mentioned a million times in this interview how much I like crime noir stuff, but that setting, that late stage Soviet Russia setting, there's so much to mine there. And there's something interesting just about that setting in and of itself. Was you said that it was originally Russia? Was the idea to do like that era where like they're kind of on the brink, but they're not quite there yet?
Yeah. So the main idea, like I said, was sort of app pupil, and I had just seen like Gorky Park, like way late to the game there, but those two things sort of collided in my head. I started coming up with this idea of a serial killer who had basically operated unimpeded for decades. And along the way, because of the app pupil thought, I was like, well, what happens if a detective discovers him only to find out that the Russian serial killer's actions are sanctioned by the government? And have the serial killer basically go, yeah, well, I've been killing people for, 70 years and I'm ready to retire. So why don't you take the mantle? And that was sort of like that, that all sounds silly, but that was sort of like the gist of how I started writing it. And then it became, how do we pull all of that stuff together and make it work? And like I said, Ray took that really basic concept and just took off with it. And that I think that era is so interesting. That the wall is about to fall. The Russians are tired of that regime. They're tired of that repression, but it's still all there. And the people operating behind the scenes are still pulling all of those strings, but also know that it's probably going to fall, so it's like a mix of all of those things. There's a political element to it, but not much of one. It's much more about the main character and his journey in dealing with his feelings of this serial killer and what it means to Russia and what it means to himself as a person. So there's some really interesting psychological stuff going on in there as well.
That all sounds awesome.
I got a couple more books I wanted to talk about. I don't know if you do, Chris, but we probably wrap up on one of them because it comes out today as the recording comes out. So maybe we'll talk about Morningstar last. But The Devil That Wears My Face.
Oh, yes.
We're huge David Pepose fans. Had him on the show, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago. I know we've been following quite a bit with all the stuff that he's been doing. Now he's writing a Marvel and things like that. But yeah, I'd say as a book to take a chance on, horror and religion, mixing in a book. How did that come all about? And it seemed to be pretty successful, but I'll let you talk about it.
Zero hot button issues in that book. Zero.
Yeah, nothing.
Well, yeah, I think when we opened the door to Creator Owned, which was sort of at the same time that we decided to open the door to licensing, we reached out to creators whose stuff we admired. There's, I would say, like all of us here at Mad Cave, we all come from different places. We all come from different things that we like. I'm an older school guy. I'm very into illustrative artists. There's certain types of books that I like to read. And then Mark London is 10 years younger than me. You know, he grew up in the 90s, and there's certain things that he really likes. And then Chris Fernandez, our publisher, is 10 years younger than that, you know, and he has like a totally different take on things, and he really likes weird. You know, books like Don't Spit in the Wind, that's Chris, you know. Chris brought that book in, and it is super weird, but it's a great book, you know. So, you know, Mike Martz obviously worked at Marvel and DC, you know, so Mike, in a lot of ways, Mike and I are similar, similar age, somewhat similar sensibilities, but you know, we all bring something different to the table that we like. So we reached out to a number of creators across that represent all things, whether it's new indie creators, people that we see kind of that get a little heat on the indie circuit, or people that just started at Marvel but are curious to do their own thing, or well-known, hyper-established, you know, kind of big names. We reach out to all of them, and you know, we just wait, and people come to us with different things. We have a weekly meeting where we go through all the submissions, and most of that submission pile has been gone through by editors first before it's kind of bumped up the chain to us to decide on what we're actually going to do. But yeah, that's sort of, you know, how things like The Devil That Wears My Face came about. And I believe Chris and Mike were both huge David Pepose fans, and that they were sort of the ones that wrangled that one in. And I mean, shoot, Exorcist, you know, it's off, like I'm in, you know.
I know Mike really loved Morningstar, so he wants to talk about it, but you brought something up that I would just love to get a quick insight on. You do submissions. What do you guys look for in a submission from somebody?
Oh, so much.
I know it's a broad question that I'm asking you to do a small answer on, but
yeah, it's so much. You know, we get projects in various stages that come to us, so we could get just a simple like synopsis pitch. We get fully scripted, fully drawn, you know, books that are already done that people are looking for somebody to publish for them. So there's a lot of different things that come to us. What we try to look for in general is we either want to see brand new ideas, or ideas that have a twist on them that we didn't see coming. You know, that's one thing. Ideas that we have seen before, but that are executed in such a cool way that we can't say no to it. Or I think we also try to look strategically across what we're doing. You know, if like the next 2 years we have, I don't know, 50 horror titles coming out, maybe we don't want to take the 51st because it's sort of a concept that we're already doing across like 10 other books. And maybe we'd rather look at the crime noir pitch, you know, because that we want more of that, or we want more action adventure, or we want more relationship drama, you know. We try to take a look across all three of our imprints, see what fits where. You know, obviously we're already planning into 2026 at this point. So there's a lot of thought process that goes into how we and whether we acquire a title, coupled with managing sort of that whole publishing schedule and kind of understanding, you know, what our goals are.
Well, with that, I have 4 words for you. Paul Bunyan, Kaiju Hunter.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You want to do it?
Sold.
I love it.
That's the first time I've heard of that. What the hell? How long have you been holding on to that one?
Oh, I've been sitting on that for years.
I like it.
I was waiting for a publisher to come on the show.
Yeah.
That'll have to go right next to Shirtless Bear Fighter. You know,
yeah,
like,
there you go.
Have them like side by side on the shelf. Yeah.
Oh my God. Love it. Yeah, so I guess we'll wrap it up here. I just before we talk about Morningstar too, I wanted to talk about, I mean, from a business standpoint, right? We talked about that a little bit earlier. Something interesting that you guys do, and I don't know if I've seen any other publishers do this, but you do this series subscription bundle on your website, and I think that's pretty cool for a digital reader like myself. I do have a lot of long boxes that I need to do something with before I start, filling more up. I'm mostly digital now, but that being said, I always say, oh, if I really love the series, I'll buy the trade after I'm done. And you have a system where you send the issues digitally monthly and then you send the trade, something like that. If you want to talk about that?
Yeah, basically, with any of our series, when you subscribe to the series, we'll send you the digital, and like you said, you'll get a physical trade at the end of that. That's our goal we want to get value for the money. We want people to have an opportunity to read our titles in any way that they so choose, whether it's on your phone or on a tablet or on your laptop or physically buying a book. The goal is to really get the stories into the hands of people that appreciate those stories. So, we have, I can gently share that there's more coming on the digital front.
Very cool.
That will surprise a lot of people, I think. So, it's certainly a focus for us as we head into the future. There's way too many people out there that only read digitally, and we want to be of service to them as well.
Yep. No, understand. I'm glad to hear that because, when people say, oh, digital, we don't focus on that, or you see a Kickstarter where they don't even offer a digital copy to us, it's like, that's essentially free money for you guys for the Kickstarter programs, if like you already have the files and this is a great jumping on point for somebody. But for me, where I just have so many books that it just makes sense to go digital right now.
I feel the same way. I mean, I'm not a digital reader. I'm definitely a paper reader. But if, like I said, if you saw you can still. I have bookshelves all the way around, but there's just piles of books on the floor, and there's just way too much. And at a certain point, you're like, okay, maybe I should just buy trades. And then after that, you're like, maybe I should just buy the omnibus. And
then you have all three.
And then you have all.
Then I have them all. Exactly.
No, it's always fun to talk to other collectors as well as, creators. Because obviously, I mean, behind you have a pretty awesome collection. But I'd say I'm running out of bookshelf space as well. But all right, so I think a good spot to wrap this up. Let's talk about Morningstar because that does, as of today, hits comic book shops. I would say I read that book, and like you said, it's not something I've ever really read before.
Right.
I think it's a interesting premise that I didn't see with kind of like we were very lucky to have a review issue, so I talked a little bit about it on the show, not to reveal too much, but I think it was more of more sci-fi than I thought it would be, and horror mixed together. But I think the premise was very interesting. I don't know if you want to talk about how that project came about. Yeah.
Well, Tim and DB came to us with a pitch, and I had worked with Tim in the past. Back when I was at Insight, we had done a book together, and over time, Tim stayed in touch with us. He reached out with 3 books that he pitched to us, all of which we loved. And, obviously he's a brilliant designer as well. And we were just like, we're going to be in the Tim Daniel business. We want to work with Tim.
Yeah.
And this was one of the 3.
Okay, cool.
And I think it's an interesting time in comics right now because I think books like this that sort of marry the fantastical elements of why we want to buy a comic, whether it's, like you said, kaiju or or horror or sci-fi, any of that kind of stuff, that marry that with real life problems, relationship drama, family dynamics, all of those things. I think that's what makes those books and really stories, just like you would with a movie or a TV show. That's what makes all that stuff stronger. I think Tim and DB have really captured that on Morningstar. The family dynamic, I think, is what makes that book really unique.
Yeah, it's very interesting
approach. Yeah. So that's I think why we were excited by it. Not just like aliens or, I don't want to get too much on the storyline, but like I wanted to talk more about like that family dynamic. That's
Yep.
what makes, I think, that book so strong.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like the sci-fi horror of it is almost in the background. And that first issue, you kind of get reminded of it again, like, oh yeah, this something crazy's happening, and
right,
someone actually might be in danger. Where it's like this family's kind of in shambles right now, and they're not functioning as they should, or still a year from now. So, no, I that was something I read it not having any expectations going into, like, wow, I haven't read anything like this. And again, this is another testament to the type of projects that Mad Cave's putting out there.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I think just over time, you want to see stories that have that growth, that really draw you in. The initial thing will draw you in, but then over the rest of the story, you're like, oh, that was really interesting. Like we did a book called "You've Been Canceled," which when I read the first issue, I was like laughing. I was just like, this is awesome. It was hilarious and kinetic. But as the story went on, it really, like, all the underlying questions, like, one, it's Running Man and it's crazy and it's silly, but there's also that part of it where I was like, man, they're like touching on all the stuff that we're dealing with today. This is so like,
it's both sides of it.
On the nose. So I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Definitely. Mark, you've been super generous with your time. So we
appreciate
it.
Yep.
I'm sure you've got a family or a dog or something that wants your attention right now. So
there you go. Or comics you need to read if you got piles like me. Yeah.
But before we take off and all that, where can people follow you, or do you want to send them to follow Mad Cave? Just where on the internet should we send people? And also, obviously, everybody out there, like they were just talking about, Morningstar is in comic shops right now, so you can check that out. Where else can we send them?
madcavestudios.com. It's the best place to be able to, you can subscribe to our books and read them digitally. You can buy our books and buy them physically. We also do a lot of like features about comic shops and creators and all that sort of thing, so you can learn a lot about it. I myself am not really a social media guy, so I'm not out there in that way, outside of LinkedIn. But in general, jump on Mad Cave. You can also find links to our creators, to the rest of our staff as well, if you have questions for us. We're very receptive. I always say that that's one of the things that also that we pride ourselves on, is that we don't let people linger in the wind. If people have questions for us or whatever, we're quick to answer and try to provide the best customer service we can.
Very cool.
It's great to hear. So to everybody out there watching, listening, check out those show notes. I'll have the link to Mad Cave's website, so you can just click on that. You don't have to type anything, just one click and you're there and all that. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time today to talk about one of our favorite publishers currently in the industry right now. And we just hope you guys keep up the good work. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again in the future, and things will be bigger and better at that point.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys.